Welcome to my channel. I'm Sacha. I'm a television journalist originally from the UK, and now I'm working on the news in Australia.
Hey guys, welcome to the video. Thank you very much for clicking on, it really means a lot. So on this video I'm going to be talking about one of the toughest nuts to crack as a journalist, and that is how we find stories. Number 1, social media. Now this is something that old school journalists will probably shake their head at and just be absolutely ashamed that I'm saying this, but a lot of stories now are found on social media because a lot of people post important stuff on there, even now police districts and firefighters, emergency services, they often post things as a first port of call on their social media, and the same goes for local sports clubs and things like that. So monitoring social media is a really great way to find stories. Yesterday at work, for example, I found out about a home invasion. So we went to interview a woman who was assaulted and broken into in the middle of the night, and I found out about that from social media, and it ended up being the top story of the day, and possibly in relation to a stabbing as well. So had I not have been on certain Facebook pages and things like that, then I wouldn't necessarily have found out about that story. So social media is definitely one of the leading ways to find stories, and it really depends on what patch you're in as to which social media you use. I'm in a regional area, so mostly people post on Facebook. Twitter here is not very active. However, you move to other places and sometimes Twitter is the predominant social media platform that's used. Social media is definitely the first port of call. Just make sure you're following all of the right pages. Number 2, contacts. So this is something that I've only really been able to take advantage of recently because I've hopped around and moved to a lot of different patches as a journalist, and I think it is quite common for a lot of journalists to do that, especially in the beginning of their career while they're trying to get experience under their belt. But unsurprisingly, having really good contacts is one really good way to bring you lots of stories. A lot of the time now people come to me with suggestions, which is absolutely fantastic, because every time I go to a shoot and interview someone, I always say before I leave, I obviously say thank you, but I always say please come to me if you have any more stories. Even if you're not sure if it's a story, just send me a message, shoot me a text, and I can let you know, because that is one really good way of having a bit of an in to what's happening and people feel like I'm approachable, which is exactly what you need to be. Another caveat along the contacts thing is doing extracurricular activities. So I play a lot of sports, and going to different clubs and things like that is a great way of meeting locals and of therefore finding out what matters to local people who've been living here their whole lives. So get out and about, speak to people, go and do stuff, and that's a way of finding out what is happening locally. Obviously it sounds like such an obvious one, but you just need to go out there and just engage with local people, and you will through the grapevine hear what's going on and the scandals that are happening. Number 3, local media. This isn't surprising. A lot of local media, obviously, they keep an eye on what other media are doing. So I work for TV, I keep an eye on the other TV station, I keep an eye on the local newspaper and the local radio, because somehow they hear stories before me. So it's really important to see what they're covering. But saying that, just because they're covering something doesn't mean we need to. Often it might not be something that's breaking or something that's happening right now. Still, it's good to keep an eye on the other outlets and see exactly what they're covering, because you don't also want to be the only outlet who's missed a massive story, because frankly that would be embarrassing. Number 4, trends. Now these are just things that you might see if you're out and about, or you might hear from people as well. So for example, my office is opposite a soup kitchen. If I see that around Christmas or any time of year after COVID, okay, there were way more people queuing up outside the soup kitchen because people were financially struggling. That's a trend. You see more people doing something, go and check it out, contact them and say, have you seen an increase? What's happening? Or say you call your local GP and you just can't get an appointment for 2 or 3 weeks, but normally you can get one in 1 week. Okay, are doctors backed up locally? Is that something that's happening? Or this is one that I'm definitely seeing a lot in the area that I'm living in. People are constantly posting on Facebook pages, which again is the social media thread coming into it, and they're all looking for accommodation. People are just struggling to find anywhere to rent because the market here has just shot up massively. So contact an estate agent. Are you finding that there are more people moving to the area? What are you seeing locally? Ask them questions. If you see a change in trends, that will give you a really, really good story, and it will give you a top line. Notice boards and advertisements. When you're out and about, just keep your eyes peeled. Sometimes at supermarkets or news agents, people put things on notice boards, and it's like the old school social media, I guess. I've definitely seen a few stories on notice boards, far fewer than I would see on social media, but it's definitely worth keeping your eyes peeled. Number 6, freedom of information requests. Now, you have the right to ask any public sector organisation for any information that they may have. FOIs can be a little bit complex and it's possibly worth another video, but if you see something, if you have a feeling about something, or if you're just not sure, sometimes the best stories have been found out by putting in an FOI. Number 7, data. Now, sometimes we get things sent to us, for example, climate change is getting worse, the global temperature is increasing, or there were X number of accidents last year in comparison to X number of accidents the year before. So reporting on things like that is kind of like trends, but it's more statistics, hard facts that you're seeing, and often they come from press releases, which is number 8, press releases. So as journalists, of course, we get inundated. I think I have about 4,000 unread emails in my inbox. Don't panic, it's fine. Anyway, we get a lot of emails, okay? So a lot of those are press releases with ridiculous titles. Seriously, some of the press releases I get, I'm just absolutely shocked at the people. Someone has literally written this and thought it was a good idea to send it.
What?
Press releases can sometimes be a good way of getting a story out there. The issue with press releases, sometimes PR companies are looking to push a certain angle, which obviously as a journalist you need to be cynical and think, what's the motivation behind this? Why are they sending this to me? What are they advertising? Because we need to make sure that we're being fair and not advertising things. So press releases can be good, you just have to make sure that you're being careful and not just giving someone the limelight for something which isn't necessarily journalism. Now, what makes a good news story and what makes a story newsworthy? I remember when I was doing my master's degree and one of my lecturers said, sex, murder, scandal, all of these things make something newsworthy a lot of the time, but of course there are other factors that you need to consider. So firstly, is something new. Why would we be reporting on something, a crime that happened 2 weeks ago, if we missed it then and there's been no repercussions since? If something new has happened and someone who was injured 2 weeks ago in an accident has now died, that's something that's new. So whatever you report on, what is the newest thing? What's the today angle? Why is it important? That's what you need to ask yourself. It has to be new. News equals new. Got it. Make sure that it's not simply an advert. So if one gym has opened up, is that a news story? Maybe not. But if multiple gyms have opened up and you're seeing a trend, that could be a news story, and then you could speak to a few of them, because you just have to be careful that you're not just simply advertising in business when you're doing news, which is often annoying for businesses because they're like, we need that airtime, and we're like, no. Will people be interested in the story? Why does it matter to the people who are going to be watching the news? Why? Ask yourself this question. If you really can't think of a reason as to why people would be interested, then maybe it's not a story that's worth running. Human interest. This is probably one of my favourite angles to think about when doing a news story, because if you have a case study and someone who is leading a package, by the way, if you don't know what a package is, I've done a video talking about TV lingo and it's an entire TV news report, but you should definitely click on the video. I'll put the video? You should definitely click on the video. I'll put it in the description below. That's such a YouTube thing to say, it's really weird, but anyway, I will do that. Sometimes those human interest stories can really make absolutely beautiful packages, and sometimes that's what people like to see. I personally love talking to other humans. As opposed to what, I don't know. But if you get these stories that showcase a story from another person, they can be so strong and really lead the way, and I think often those stories can really stick with people. For example, one of the ones that I did recently was with this guy who is stuck in Australia. He was living in the Philippines where his 2 daughters and his fiance are, and he's separated from them and hasn't been able to see his youngest daughter since she was born. So it's a human interest story. He was the only interviewee in the story, which doesn't typically stick to the rules that we often make for a package. But it was such a beautiful story. I mean, it was difficult personally for me to do because I'm stuck, I'm away from my family too. But it was also just so resonating and just had all of that gravitas and that really good stuff in it, because he was so emotional, he's stuck, it's COVID, you know, there's so many relevant factors in this story.
I just miss my kids and my life. I miss my life over there.
That was one really good human interest story that I've done recently, and it was received really well as well. And the guy messaged me and said that people locally had seen the story, and he'd been in a few shops and people were giving him like free drinks and free food, which he was struggling, so it really made the world of difference to him too. Often in newsrooms we have a discussion regarding the quantity and quality of a story, and by that I mean quantity, how many people are affected by this? Quality, was it something absolutely dramatic, something out of the blue, something severe, and something that's shocked the community? Okay, so which one do you put first, the one that affects more people or the one that was shocking? So if something is affecting lots of people locally, for example, COVID vaccine, that's going to affect a lot of people. It's obviously an important story. However, if a murder happens and that one person has died, obviously there are going to be ramifications for the perpetrator and the family of the person who's died. But it affects fewer people, but it's a murder, so it's shocking. So it's a discussion that you need to have, but both of those stories are relevant. It's up to a producer to decide which order to put them in. Conflict often provides good stories as well. This is really commonly seen in politics, where you see 2 parties knocking heads. We never see that in politics, do we? Anyway, that's a really good one. Conflict provides really good stories, 2 businesses arguing, whatever it is. So that's pretty much what makes a really good story, and just remember the new angle is super important, because when you're pitching a story to a producer or in a newsroom, you want to feel confident in the story that you're pitching and know that you're hitting all of those really important factors, especially the new factor, because if it's something that happened yesterday, they're not going to be interested in it. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Really hope that you enjoyed the video. I do have a few other videos out there that have been posted in the last couple of weeks. One that you might find really useful if you've watched this video is called Tips for Journalists. It's got other nuggets of information, things that I wish I knew when I started out, so definitely click on that. And yeah, please do like, comment and subscribe. It helps the YouTube algorithm apparently, and it would really help me out. So thanks for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video, obviously.